Hi guys, it's been a morning for me. What's your morning been like? So, I promised you guys some live streaming, and apparently, YouTube has a vetting process. Once you apply to live stream, they check to make sure that you're not some scary person doing scary things to, I don't know, animals, children, things. I have no idea. I have to guess at this point what they're trying to screen out, but I'm sure there's a valid reason. But the point is, I can't start live streaming for another 24 hours. And yet, I promised you guys a video. So I'm just going to record this. And I tried earlier and learned I have some things to learn when it comes to recording videos. Yeah, so we're going to piece this together and we are going to make sure that you guys know exactly how to make this quickly and efficiently and without interruptions from the kids or my washing machine making way too much noise. So without further ado, let's get started on our video on how to make white sandwich bread, also known as Tangzhong milk bread. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need for the bread is bread flour. I use the unbleached kind because you get a lot more flavor out of it when they haven't bleached all of it out of it. You'd be surprised how much you can taste the difference, particularly with bread that you're making at home. You can use all-purpose flour, but frankly, it takes a lot more finagling and work and experience with dough making. And this is supposed to be an easy bread video, so make it easy on yourself and just go and get some bread flour. That big old bag lasts me about at least 3 months, and I bake pretty regularly, to give you an idea. You don't have to get the big one, and even if you do, it's going to last you a good long while. The other thing is, it is a milk bread. It's fortified with milk, so you want to get yourself some milk. Some people don't like using whole milk. Some people are lactose intolerant and have to use Lactaid. That is absolutely fine. Just use what you got. I prefer whole milk. I think it gets a better flavor. You're also going to need an egg. I know I've put the whole thing out here, but you just need one of them. It calls for 50 grams of eggs, but most large eggs are about 50 or 51 or 52 grams, and it really doesn't make a huge difference. You're also going to need 50 grams of butter, and one of these sticks is about 113 grams. So if you just cut it in half conservatively, you've got exactly how much butter you need, and it just needs to be unsalted and room temperature. You're also going to need yeast. It is a yeast bread. That's where you get all the rise and all the airy lightness. And that's what makes it delicious. You can buy the little packs if you just want to try making bread at least once in your whole life. Or you can buy a whole jar of it and it keeps for forever in your fridge. Yeah, I love it. Buy the active dry, don't buy the rapid rise. And I say that because rapid rise may take you less time, but the faster it goes, the less time it's had to really develop richness of flavor. And you just get bread that ends up tasting like nothing. And if you're already baking it at home, you might as well get some flavor out of it, right? You're buying the unbleached flour. It's not it's not more expensive than the regular kind, but yeah, you want flavor in your bread, especially if you're baking it at home. You're also going to use a tiny bit of salt. That also adds flavor to your actual bread, and then the littlest bit of sugar. Now, a lot of people might be completely turned off by that idea. Do not worry. You are not consuming the sugar. The yeast is. It's food for the yeast. The yeast needs it to develop all those bubbles that give it that lightness inside the bread. You cannot just cut it out. You will have no rise. Your yeast needs food. Feed your yeast. So yeah, it's not much. You're not even going to taste the flavor of it inside the bread itself. I do sometimes substitute it part by part for honey, but I haven't used sugar substitutes, and I know they're considerably sweeter by volume. So be careful if you decide to substitute it. The only one I've tried is honey, and so know what you're dealing with. But yeah, those are all the ingredients that you need. So now we're going to move on to utensils that you're going to need. So we're going to cook the Tangzhong. Again, I'll explain that in a minute, in a pan. And I use a whisk to completely incorporate the flour into the milk. And then I generally scoop it out with this, but you don't have to. You can use this. It's all up to you. I find it easier to scoop out with a spatula, but like I said, I understand if you don't want to get 14,000 things dirty making this bread. And then you're going to need a measuring cup or something to keep the milk in when you're measuring it. And I generally use just one of these for measuring the salt, and then I'll put the salt in the bowl, and then I'll measure the yeast and then put the yeast in the bowl, and then the sugar, that kind of thing. Again, for utility of space, and I have kids, I don't want to wash 14,000 things all at once. You're also going to need a stand mixer, and that's to mix the dough. You can do it by hand on a surface, a clean surface, but it takes about 4 times as long. And this is a very wet dough, so it's going to be very sticky as you work it. You know it's ready when it's not sticky anymore, but that takes a really long time, especially if you're doing it by hand. Save yourself some time and use the stand mixer. But if you don't have it and you have a bench scraper and you really want to get your hands dirty, you can do it on a surface. Just be prepared for stickiness. Again, this recipe is meant to be a simple, quick bread recipe. So if you want to make things easy for yourself, just use the stand mixer and the dough hook. The last one is we're going to shape these into the final shape either on a surface or like a kitchen countertop, or you can do it on a cutting board, because not everybody has the time or the space on kitchen counters, and they may not want to sit there scrubbing for a solid 30 minutes to clean up the countertops, but they do have a clean cutting board. It'll save you quite a bit of time by doing that. So if you want to use a cutting board as well, that's an option. It's entirely up to you. Again, like I said, you don't have to get one of these dirty if you don't want to, but it's an option. And the final one, which is probably the most important, is a scale, a kitchen scale. They're $5-10, guys. They're not expensive, but I'm sorry, baking is chemistry. You need accurate measurements. These are ratios we're talking about here. And while you can get real artistic with cooking, there's only so much play, or you can only play with baking recipes in certain ways. When it comes down to the chemistry, you have to follow very specific measurements. And the best way to get foolproof, easy bread is just to weigh all your ingredients. So yeah, assemble your ingredients and we can get started. I don't know why I keep doing this Assassin's Creed thing. Sorry. So I almost forgot to mention that you are going to need something to actually bake it in. This recipe makes 2 loaves, and I like using the loaf pans. But if you don't have a loaf pan, you can always make 3 loaves. I'm going to post the recipe as I'm making it right now, which is 2 loaves. And then I'm also going to post it as a single loaf recipe. That way, you can either make a single loaf, or you can make 2 loaves like I'm making right now, or you can triple the single loaf recipe and put it in just a regular cake pan. And then you can make 3 side by side. They'll bake just fine, and you can rip them apart and give one to a neighbor that maybe isn't finding a loaf of bread just like you. And then you've been really kind and considerate to your neighbor. So that's an option. Or, I mean, I make dinner rolls with the exact same recipe. They come out fantastically. You just make them into balls instead of the loaf, and you put like 24 of them in here with the double recipe. And that works just fine as well. Or dinner rolls in a circular, I mean, use what you have, guys. Just wanted to make that point. Use what you have.